In a small town in the United States, a girl named Kaya Graviter grew up in a devout Christian family. Every Sunday, she sat in the church pews, listening to sermons with deep reverence. She read the Bible with great devotion, trying to understand the teachings passed down through generations in her family. However, something within her kept stirring. Since childhood, Kaya had not only accepted the beliefs taught to her, but was also a seeker. Many questions lingered in her mind. Why do we have to pray through an intermediary? Why can't we address God directly? She often asked these questions, but the answers she received never truly satisfied her heart. As she entered her teenage years, her doubts grew stronger. At the age of 16, Kaya began to feel that something was missing in her faith. During every family prayer, they would always express gratitude to Jesus, but Kaya felt more comfortable thanking God directly. That feeling continued to haunt her, making her feel as if she were standing at a crossroads. The year 2011 became a turning point in her life. When she started college, Kaya met several Muslim students. Before that, Islam was a religion she had only known through the media, often filled with negative stigma. She had already believed that Islam was a strange, foreign teaching that contradicted the values she had always held. One day, a friend said to her, "Did you know that Islam and Christianity share the same prophets?" That statement shook her thoughts. Kaya found it strange. How could two religions that seemed so different have something in common? Driven by curiosity, she began to explore Islam more deeply. At first, her intention was not to understand, but to prove that Islam was exactly as portrayed by the media, an irrational religion. She read articles, watched videos, and engaged in discussions with her friends. However, the deeper she delved, the more she discovered things that directly contradicted the prejudices she had always held. One of the most surprising things for her was the Quran. Unlike the scriptures of other religions, this holy book of Islam had never changed since it was first revealed. No revisions, no new additions, no different versions. Every letter recited by Muslims today is exactly the same as what Prophet Muhammad taught centuries ago. At the same time, Kaya also discovered that Islam teaches simplicity in worship. There are no intermediaries, no complex concept of the Trinity. A Muslim simply raises their hands and speaks directly to God in their prayers. Kaya's heart began to waver. What she had always considered a strange teaching was actually providing answers to the questions that had haunted her for so long. After months of studying Islam, Kaya could no longer deny it. Her heart had found the truth she had been searching for. She began to feel a peace she had never experienced before. In 2014, after a long journey, Kaya made a life-changing decision. With a trembling heart and tears streaming down her face, she recited the Shahada. As the words left her lips, she felt as if the burden she had carried for so long had disappeared. There was a happiness that words could not describe. She had found her true home in Islam. However, the journey was not over. Her decision to become a Muslim was not easy. Fear lingered in her mind. How would her family react? How would her friends accept this change? For a long time, Kaya chose to hide her Islam. She worshipped in secret, read the Quran in silence, and lived a double life. Until in her final year of college, she grew tired of living in deception. She no longer wanted to hide her identity. One day, gathering all her courage, she decided to wear the hijab. As she stepped outside for the first time with the hijab on her head, her heart pounded. She knew there would be strange looks, perhaps even difficult questions. But most importantly, she had made peace with herself. Her family was, of course, shocked, but over time they began to accept Kaya's decision. Though it was not easy, she remained steadfast in her faith, explaining to them that Islam is a religion that teaches peace, love, and generosity. Today, Kaya Graviter is not only a Muslima, but also a fighter for the truth. She uses her voice as a writer to correct misconceptions about Islam, sharing her story so that more people can understand its true teachings. I used to be someone who didn't care and believed everything the media said because I had never met a Muslim or understood the true essence of Islam, she said. From a girl full of doubts, Kaya has now found unwavering faith. Her journey is proof that the light of truth always finds its way, even in the most unexpected places. Becoming a convert to Islam is a path full of challenges that requires great courage. Not everyone can understand, let alone accept, that decision with an open heart. For Sophia, an English girl with a beautiful face and a heart full of love for the truth, this journey was filled with deep wounds and countless tears. It all started when she began to learn about Islam through her university friends. They were different from the people she usually met, friendly, humble, and full of compassion. In their company, Sophia felt something she had never encountered before, peace that touched her soul. They never judged me, recalls Sophia with shining eyes. They taught me about the true meaning of life. Her interest in Islam deepened. Every recitation of the Quran she heard moved her heart. One night, in the quiet stillness, she made a decision that would change her life forever. She recited the Shahada. Tears streamed down her face. These were tears of happiness, relief, and the realization that she had finally found her life's purpose. However, that happiness had to be kept tightly hidden, like a treasure that must not be seen by anyone, especially her father. Sophia's father was a stern man who deeply despised Islam. To him, the religion was a threat, a nightmare that should never touch his family. Every morning, Sophia would leave the house in regular clothes. But once she arrived at campus, she would rush to the restroom to change into her abaya and hijab, which had now become part of her identity as a Muslima. Every time she wrapped the hijab around her head, she felt as though she were embracing a new world that gave her strength and warmth. However, each step back home felt heavy, as if a mountain was pressing down on her shoulders. Then the day came, the day she had feared the most. Sophia had just returned from campus when her father opened the door. His eyes immediately fixed on the hijab covering his daughter's head. His face turned pale, then flushed with anger. "What is this?" His voice boomed like a storm ready to destroy. Sophia stood frozen, her heart racing, as if 1,000 needles were piercing her heart. Words failed her, but her eyes filled with tears that revealed everything. I'm a Muslim now." Her voice trembled, barely audible. Her father's shout broke the silence. "You, a Muslim! You betray your family! Leave this house! I don't want terrorism in my life!" Every word felt like a sword cutting deep into Sophia's heart, but in the midst of the pain, she found strength from her new faith. "Father, I've become a better person. I stopped drinking alcohol. I watch what I eat. I am a better person because of Islam." But her father refused to listen. With fiery anger, he pushed Sophia out of the house. "Go! Find somewhere else to live. I don't want bombs in my mailbox." That night, Sophia stood in the street, her face drenched in tears, carrying nothing but her faith to warm her. Her heart shattered, but she knew that this was the price she had to pay for the truth she had chosen. Over time, their relationship slowly improved. They began speaking again, though the rejection still lingered in her father's heart. But for Sophia, her father's love, no matter how cold and harsh, was a test that she had to endure with patience. She believed that one day his heart, full of hatred, would soften through her love. The rejection and pain Sophia endured were not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a much larger story, a story of struggle, love, and conviction. Even though her relationship with her father was not fully healed, Sophia never stopped hoping. She knew that faith teaches patience, and patience would lead to the victory of the heart. In the long, quiet nights, she prostrated, praying for her father with tears that flowed endlessly. She asked Allah to open her father's heart, just as he had guided her to the path of truth. "The hearts of humans belong to him," Sophia said one day, "and I believe that nothing is stronger than a child's prayer for their parents." With firm determination and boundless love, Sophia lived her life as a passionate Muslima. Every challenge she faced with the belief that every difficulty is followed by ease. Every sacrifice she made was a step towards reaching the promised paradise. Sophia's story serves as a reminder that becoming a Muslim is a journey of conquering oneself in an environment full of trials. However, with strong resolve and sincere love, faith will always find its way. Even the hardest of hearts can eventually soften with genuine affection and prayers that never cease. Elisabeth Jakstadt, a beautiful woman from Germany, once lived a glamorous life as a model. At the age of 15, she was already walking the catwalk, gracing magazine covers, and even modeling swimwear for a famous brand in Brazil. Her life seemed perfect in the eyes of many. Popularity, beauty, and freedom appeared to be part of her world. However, who would have thought that fate would lead her down a different path, one filled with peace and true meaning in life? Elizabeth's spiritual journey began when she visited Egypt for a vacation. She enjoyed the beauty of the land of the pyramids, wandered through bazaars, tasted local delicacies, and admired the exotic Middle Eastern culture. However, a small incident changed her entire perspective on life. While shopping at a bazaar with a group of tourists, Elizabeth noticed a Muslim shopkeeper who suddenly closed his store right in front of them. It was Friday. At that time, Elizabeth still had a materialistic mindset and felt surprised and somewhat annoyed. To her, it was a golden opportunity for the shopkeeper to make a big profit since the tourists were ready to spend a lot of money. How foolish this man is, Elizabeth thought. Why would he close his shop and turn down our money? Her curiosity pushed her to ask the shopkeeper directly. The answer she received was simple, yet it struck her deeply. "I am a Muslim, and it is my duty to perform the Friday prayer," the man replied calmly. Elizabeth was speechless. She never expected someone to willingly give up worldly profit just to fulfill a religious obligation. From that moment, her mind became filled with deep questions. What is the true purpose of life? Why is this man so steadfast in his faith? What makes this religion so strong? Curious about Islam, Elizabeth began exploring its teachings. She purchased a translation of the Quran and started reading it. Initially, she was merely seeking knowledge, but the deeper she read, the more captivated she became. When she reached the middle of Surah al-Baqarah, Elizabeth experienced something she had never felt before, an overwhelming sense of peace. She found answers to many of the questions that had long troubled her mind. "I felt as if the Quran was speaking directly to me. I cried as I realized how empty my life had been all this time. I had everything, beauty, a career, money, but there was still a void that couldn't be filled. And when I read the Quran, I discovered the true meaning of life," she recalled. With full conviction, Elizabeth finally recited the Shahada, officially embracing Islam and choosing it as her path in life. However, her journey of transformation was not easy. Her decision to convert to Islam brought numerous challenges and hardships. Elizabeth decided to wear the hijab as an act of obedience to Allah. Unfortunately, this decision cost her her job. Once respected as a teacher, she was suddenly fired solely for wearing the hijab. They even offered me double my salary if I agreed to remove my hijab. But I refused. I couldn't betray my faith, and because of that, I was fired and expelled, she recalled, her eyes welling with tears. Elizabeth's life changed drastically. From being a model with many fans, she had to face a life filled with challenges. Not only did she lose her job, but she also lost her place to stay. However, she remained resilient and was confident that Allah would open a way for her. In the midst of her hardship, Elizabeth met a man who was intrigued by her conversion story. He offered his help and connected her with an acquaintance in Egypt. It seemed as if it was destined as Elizabeth returned to Egypt, the country where her journey to Islam had begun. There she found a place to live and a supportive Muslim community. Now Elizabeth has settled in Egypt and lives as a devout Muslimah. The story of Elizabeth Yakstad is a testament that guidance can come from anywhere, even from unexpected small events. From a model living in a glamorous world, she found peace in Islam. Elizabeth chose to lose wealth and worldly comforts in order to preserve her faith. However, she gained something far more valuable: peace of mind, conviction, and true happiness. I may have lost my job and my home, but I found something far more precious: Islam, and that is the greatest gift of my life, she said gratefully. Elizabeth's journey reminds us that in every trial, there is unexpected help from Allah. And for those who seek the truth with a sincere heart, Allah will surely guide them to His path. In 2001, Yvonne Ridley, a British journalist working for the Sunday Express, was assigned to cover the war in Afghanistan. As a brave journalist accustomed to reporting from conflict zones, she illegally sneaked into Afghanistan, disguising herself as a local woman by wearing a burqa. Her goal was to obtain an exclusive report on the situation under Taliban rule. However, her adventure turned into a nightmare when she was captured by Taliban forces near the Pakistan border. At the time, news about the Taliban was filled with images of brutality, and Ridley was convinced that she would be imprisoned or even executed. In a state of fear, she tried to hide her true identity, but after an inspection, the Taliban quickly discovered that she was a Western journalist who had entered without permission. When taken to a Taliban detention camp, Ridley thought she would be treated harshly. However, the opposite happened. She was not beaten, tortured, or mistreated as she had imagined. Instead, the Taliban guards treated her with respect. They even provided her with food, water, and a proper bed. Among them, there was a man who often spoke with her. Politely, he asked if Ridley wanted to read the Quran. Ridley, who was still stubborn at the time, flatly refused. She felt that this was merely part of the Taliban's propaganda to brainwash her. However, as time went on, she began to notice something that unsettled her: the way these men behaved. Although they were often portrayed as monsters by the Western media, Ridley saw that they lived with discipline, upheld their honor, and remained steadfast in their religious values. During a conversation, one of them said to her, "We will not harm you because Islam forbids us from hurting innocent women and guests." These words changed Ridley's perspective. She began to wonder, why were the people labeled as terrorists more polite and honorable than some men in her own country? After 11 days in captivity, the Taliban finally released Yvonne Ridley as a goodwill gesture to the West. As she was about to leave, one of the Taliban leaders advised her, "Read the Quran. Don't trust the media. Find out about Islam for yourself." Those words kept echoing in her mind. She, who once deeply hated Islam, began to feel intrigued to learn more about the religion. After returning to England, Ridley couldn't ignore her promise. She began reading the Quran and studied Islam objectively, not through the lens of the media she had always known. The more she read, the more fascinated she became. She discovered that Islam was not a religion of violence, as often portrayed in the media, but a faith of compassion, discipline, and justice. The teachings about the oneness of God, women's rights in Islam, and the beauty of Muslim morals deeply impressed her. 2 years after her captivity, in 2003, Yvonne Ridley recited the Shahada and officially embraced Islam. Her decision to convert shocked many people in England. As a journalist, she was known for being outspoken and courageous in criticizing injustice. Now, as a Muslim, she uses her voice to fight Islamophobia and defend the rights of Muslims in the West. She wrote books and frequently spoke at various international forums to explain how the Western media often misrepresents Islam. She was also active in politics, criticizing the foreign policies of Western countries towards the Muslim world. In the past, she thought Islam was a religion that oppressed women. However, after converting to Islam, she actually experienced a freedom and peace she had never felt before. People thought that after I converted to Islam, I would become an oppressed woman. On the contrary, I feel freer than ever, she said in an interview. Yvonne Ridley's story is proof that guidance can come in unexpected ways. From a journalist who once hated Islam, she eventually discovered the beauty of a religion she had misunderstood. She said, "If I had never been captured by the Taliban, I might never have known what Islam really is." Now she continues to fight for the truth and against negative propaganda about Islam. From a skeptical journalist, she has transformed into a devout Muslim and a defender of Islam in the Western world.